Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Hunter Ohanian. I'm the director of the Stonewall National Museum and Archive here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we're very happy to have all of you here. Tonight, our conversation is with Maria Bauman-Morales. Maria, how are you? Nice to see you.
I am happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you. For those of you who don't know Stonewall, we're located here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We are one of the largest LGBTQ archives in the United States. This week, interestingly, we had a meeting with about 40 other queer archives throughout the United States, a Zoom meeting. It possibly was one of the first meetings of its type, and it was great. People were there from Anchorage and from Washington State and California and DC and Iowa and the Midwest and Florida and every place. And the amount of work that is being done nationally to preserve LGBTQ history is really just amazing. Yeah, it really is amazing. And I make this pitch often. I'm going to make it again. If you have materials out there that you don't think are important, but they are in any way gay or LGBTQ related, please, please don't throw them away. Give them to your local LGBTQ organization. If you're in Florida, you can certainly send them to us and let us throw them away. But let us go through them and see what the important stuff is, and then we'll throw the other stuff away as well too. At Stonewall, in our archive, we have 2,700 linear feet, and by appointment, you can come and look at our archive or do research, and so we encourage people to do that. We're lining people up for this winter right now, and so that's good. And then we have our library, and the library is one of the largest LGBTQ libraries in the world, 28,000 volumes, all organized under the Library of Congress system. You can search our library by going to our website, stonewall-museum.org, and you can find out everything about Stonewall and all the activities. We started this virtual public programming series in the beginning of COVID, like many people did, and this might be episode 31 or 32. I'm not sure. We've been doing them virtually every single week since May, and we've had such great artists and writers and thinkers and speakers and community activists on, and it's been a wonderful way of giving all of us an opportunity to learn more and engage more when we're at a time where we can't go out and do things. And one thing I learned recently from some frequent followers is that there are a group of people who text back and forth and make cute comments between each other about the guests who are there. And they say it's sort of like going to openings where, you know, you would just stand with your friend and you would just chat with somebody with your friend. And this is an opportunity for them to get together this way. And so I think it's great. Sometimes people have a glass of wine. Sometimes I might even have a glass of wine, and it's a very relaxing situation. So if you don't get our newsletter, you can sign up on the website. And then this is being taped, and so it will be posted on the website. It takes us about 2 weeks. We're about 2 weeks behind. But to get that up there, you can see all the past talks that we've done. And also, if you have any suggestions, many of the speakers who we bring on are as a result of our audience and suggestions that they make. And so please pass them on. Send it to me directly at hunter@stonewall-museum.org, or just go to the website and find someone's name, and it will float up there. And then also, I just want to say hello to Emery Grant. Emery, show yourself. There you are. Deputy Director Emery Grant is behind the scenes, and he's making sure everything is running smoothly for us. And the way we run these is we ask people to throw their questions into the chat or the Q&A part. We'll monitor those, and then we'll save like the last 15 minutes of our chat for questions from the audience. But this first part is really an opportunity for Maria to present her work and for she and I to have a conversation about things that are going on. So I think that's all. One last thing, we do have 2 exhibitions up. One last thing, we just opened a show called Queers at Home, and there'll be a virtual curator walkthrough of that next Thursday, I believe. But if you're here, we're open and you can stop in and see it. And then we're in the last few weeks of a show called life expressions, all right, life letters, LGBTQ expressions of love. And so those are wonderful pieces of correspondence between mothers and children and lovers and even classified ads. And so that show will be up probably for about 2 more weeks, and we'll have to take that one down. So Maria,
Yeah.
now that all that stuff is out of the way, question number one, where are we finding you this evening?
I am talking with everybody from Lenape-Hoking, um, which is also known as Flatbush, Brooklyn. I'm in New York.
Yes. And specifically, where are you tonight? Are you at home?
Specifically, I'm at home. And, I'm representing my Florida roots, I think, because even here in Brooklyn, I grew up in Florida.
Right.
Um, and so there's something about teal that just speaks to me. I'll bring the ocean wherever I go. And
Mm,
so my wife painted this accent wall for us in the living room, and we've got another one like it in our bedroom. So I'm in the living room here.
right.
Um, yeah, surrounded by some art.
Nice. How have you been doing with the whole COVID situation?
You know, like many folks, up and down. This is not the first um, epidemic that we've been through. When I think about being part of queer community, certainly the AIDS epidemic, AIDS and HIV, it's just heinous when we think about it. When I think about being a Black person and the epidemic of violence against Black people in this country is something that we've also been undergoing. So for me, this feels like a third round or a third wave of sort of these large, looming um, opportunities.
Mm,
I'm going to call it an opportunity for us to really double down on what's important to us. And it's an opportunity for us to recognize that we're human, recognize each other's humanity. I think the AIDS HIV epidemic, when it burst on the scene, was a huge challenge, and it was an opportunity for us to recognize queer people are humans, right? We are your sisters and brothers and siblings, your mothers and fathers and children, all of that. Um, this opportunity with violence against Black people, state sanctioned violence, is another opportunity for us to recognize humanity. The BLM movement shows us that, right? Black Lives Matter, that we are literally people, which is such a fundamental and basic idea that it's almost embarrassing, and yet that's where we are. And I think with COVID-19, we're getting that opportunity again to say, wow, my actions affect everybody, not only my city, but the nation and the world. So that's a long answer, but that's where I am these days. Those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about within this pandemic. And on the other hand, resourcefulness prevails.
mm.
I'm making artwork that is site responsive. It's long been site responsive. Now it's online. So I know we'll talk about that later. But, all of these are part of, I think, life during a pandemic, the good, the bad, the ugly. But I certainly am sobered by all of the deaths. I mean, we just can't talk about the pandemic without naming all of the people who have perished, and folks who were dealing with another kind of oppression before COVID hit us have been unduly affected. So, I'm sobered by that.
Yeah. I mean, I just turned to look at the TV. They usually have a little thing on the bottom there. It's 287,000 deaths. I mean, over a quarter of a million people. And of course, the infection rates right now are so terrible. And granted, everybody is sick and tired of all the disruptions into our life. But presumably, people who are here with us this evening are doing the right thing, and they're not making this political of just behaving themselves and behaving themselves. It sort of makes me think about some of these people who are posing the masks that, well, don't they fasten their seatbelts when they get in a car? don't, when they sell their house, aren't they required to make sure there's smoke detectors in the house? I mean, the government at times has to force certain things for public safety. I mean, yes, of course, we have a Amendment, but you still can't walk into a crowded theater and yell fire if there isn't one, because it's a matter of public safety. And that's what I don't understand. I mean, I appreciate a lot of libertarian views, but I just don't understand how leaders haven't sort of taken this. I think some have tried, but the pushback has been really so profound that they haven't really stood up to the pushback.
I hear you. I appreciate you bringing up those examples of, you know, just regular precautions that we take in the rest of our lives, i.e., seat belts. And, I think regardless of the laws and lawmakers, I'm really interested in how can I be a better human
Mm,
amongst other humans. So whether there's a law or not, I'm just thinking again about our humanity that says, if I can um, make the air a little safer for your grandmother, for my wife, I'll do it. And I hope that you all will do the same for me.
right. And that doesn't seem to be that much. The analogies are endless. We don't have saloons with spittoons in them for people to spit anymore because it caused tuberculosis. They're against the law. You can't spit. I mean, anyway, I'll stop. Anyway, so I was going through a lot of your accomplishments and the issues that you think are quite important today. And so as I think about you as being a multidisciplinary artist, a community organizer, speaker on social justice, and somebody who is an advocate for racial equality in the arts. And that's a pretty powerful package that you have there of things. Now, you grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. Um, First question, what kind of influences do you think you had as a kid in the family and the environment that you grew up in to give you such an amazing portfolio of things you're working on today?
Wow. Thanks for naming it such amazing. I'm trying to be a whole person, just as we all are. And so, Audre Lorde has a beautiful poem called "Attend Me," and in it, one of the lines, it's a prayer actually, and she says, "Sebulisa Mawu, protect me from throwing any part of myself away."
Hmm,
Um, Speaking of queer icons, Audre Lorde
right,
is one of my patron saints.
right.
And so that idea of protect me from throwing any parts of myself away, I think is how I've arrived at this long list of roles that you mentioned. And the fact is, we all have that, whether it's all kinds of things, we all are multifaceted. But my particular brand of that multifacetedness, um, yeah, starts in Florida. I grew up working class. And I grew up in a household that was really concerned and preoccupied with justice,
Hmm,
not for individuals, but for a community. Um, I remember my mom took me to a march when I was younger against Santorum, who was making anti gay um, remarks and trying to pass legislation against us. And that was the first political protest that I remember attending. But those conversations were always alive and well in my house. And so I grew up with a strong sense that we're connected and we're responsible. And also that connection is joyous, that it's not only about protesting, but it's about being part of a potluck community, or it's about um, having support when you need it. Um, and so growing up in Jacksonville certainly informed my love of social justice. Um, and then I have to shout out, I attended Douglas Anderson School of the Arts in Jacksonville for high school, and that was such a great experience of being in a public school um, and having 2 periods of art per day, you know, of dancing as my physical education credit. And they're amazingly generous people there. Um, huh. Gosh, speaking of these pandemics, I just have to lift up the name of Stephen Schroyer.
Okay.
Stephen Schroyer is an ancestor now, but he was one of my ballet teachers at Douglas Anderson in Florida. And he was a gay man, and he did die way too soon when I was a student. But I just think about his generosity. I mean, he invited me to his private studio. He had a private dance studio outside of our school. And I had started concert dance later than most people do. And so he invited me to his private studio to sort of catch up, to take lessons. And we didn't have a lot of money for that kind of thing. And he said, just come anyway.
Mm.
So this is the kind of family, you know, that extended family and just community that we as queer folks are part of, and that we as Floridians and Southerners are part of.
Yeah.
And I'll just say that I went to Florida State University, and I met Jawale Zoller there, who's the founding artistic director of Urban Bush Women. And she's alive and kicking and well. She's among the living. And she's just a powerhouse. And I think Jawale, meeting her, was such a great example of knowing someone who was squarely in her artistic career and completely a community organizer and a lover of justice. And she taught me that those things can intertwine. So I actually really appreciate your question, Hunter, because all of that was in Florida.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's wonderful to hear these stories. So when you went to college, at that time, were you decided that dance was going to be your art form?
I was.
Yeah.
I fell in love with dance. I feel like dance grabbed me because I didn't. I feel like the dance, you know, to quote Pearl Primus, the dance claimed me. I At Douglas Anderson, the way that I ended up attending that school is I went for the summer, a summer musical program. They have a summer musical program, and I literally just went. This is so horrible now, but at the tender age of 15, I thought, oh, let me get my fine arts credit out of the way, because my goal was to be valedictorian of the college prep school that I attended at that time. And so I thought, oh, your fine arts credit is an unweighted course. Let me take that during the summer, so I have room in my schedule for more weighted courses during the year, so my GPA is as high as it could possibly be. And of course, that's all she wrote, because I went to the summer musical and I landed a dance role in the musical, and I just fell in love. And my own mother said, what was your question?
What was the musical?
It was Annie, Get Your Gun.
Great.
Annie, Get Your Gun. But my mom said, oh my God, Maria, you are happy. You come home every day so happy. Are you sure? Maybe you should go to this school, you know, because that had been offered to me. And I said, no, I am on, you know, my idea was that I was going to be a literary critic and write essays on literature. That was my idea of what I would do when I grew up.
You still have time. You still have time.
Thank you, because we're multifaceted, right?
Right.
But anyhow, really, thankfully, she kind of insisted and checked in with the folks at that school, and they let us know, yes, we have advanced classes, et cetera, et cetera. And so I did switch over to Douglas Anderson, and I was valedictorian of that school.
I'm not at all surprised. You having just met you, I don't know you that well, but still, you seem like somebody who is very determined to know where she wants to go. Yeah.
I was pretty determined. Thanks for saying. It's just part of my blueprint. You know, we're all different. But yeah. So going there and studying dance, I wasn't sure if I was good enough at concert dance to go major in it for college, but I wanted it pretty badly. And so I thought, if I audition for college dance programs and I don't get in, then that tells me I'm too late. That won't be my life's path. But I did get in, and it has been my life's path.
And then just to put sort of a big arc on it from college, you've had your own dance company, you've had a variety of different workshops, you've received numerous awards, you've done residencies, and so you've been able to parlay your artistic career it seems almost as if from the time you left college until today, you've been able to keep this gig going in a satisfying way.
I have. I mean, I feel resourceful and I also feel connected to community. You know, I'm really loath to kind of go, oh, yeah, I did it, because there's no way I could do what I do without Jawale and Maria Warshaw, who I know is watching, who's another, you know, queer elder who I'm so grateful that we have in our midst. I mean, I think we all are part of some underground railroad, you know,
Mm.
whether we name it as such or not. I think some groups are socialized not to name the help that they get. And so it just sort of, they're taught to just kind of appear in whatever success they have and just take it in. But I think um, all of us are part of a network, you know, and that there are some folks along the way who are saying, hey, check this out, or, you know, what about this? Or do you want to come to this meeting, etc. And I'm really grateful because I have had that along the way.
Yeah, no, it definitely sounds like it. Um, and so you're still choreographing, and you're still dancing, and you're doing two residencies now, it seems. One at Urban Bushwoman, and then also you did one at the Brick Lab, and then also at Red Tail as well too. And so both of those are going on right now.
That's right. I am a Brick Lab fellow, which I'm really grateful to be. And right now, my company MBDance, we're um, in residence through Red Tail with Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning in Queens. And you mentioned Urban Bushwomen. I am really happy to be part of a national fellowship program, an Urban Bushwomen choreographic fellow. And I wonder, now might be a time, there's nothing like seeing artwork.
Sure.
I wonder if now's a chance to share. So I told folks were maybe,
Sounds perfect to me.
okay, well, I'll just say to give a little context. I said this to Hunter already, but we're literally in rehearsal now. The rest of the company is still in the Zoom rehearsal, and I will rejoin them after this, but I couldn't say no. I really wanted to be here with you
Thank
all.
you.
But we're in rehearsal for this artwork called Desire, a Sankofa Dream. Desire, a Sankofa Dream. And it's really an ode to Black queer technologies for living, you know,
Mm.
for living well. And maybe we can maximize that and press play. This is the trailer for the new work that we are sharing soon. Thanks there, Emery. Yeah, so if we maximize with, yeah, we got it. There's sound as well.
Choices. You inside this. May our space that we're sharing together, as well as the space that we're each in, apart from each other, nourish us.
Luciana Reyes, Michelle, Alicia Melendez.
Okay. I need you to turn your video fourth eye off.
Thanks for sharing that, Emery. It's just a little bit of a taste of what we're cooking up right now.
So now that is a work in production now.
Literally, we will premiere at the end of January through co-commission of 651 Arts and BAD. and BAD being an organization really dedicated to queer and trans and LGBTQ folks, and 651 Arts being a Black organization, and those are just really near and dear to my heart. So yeah, we're working towards the premiere in January, and then we'll travel it. We'll be hosted.
How long is the piece?
The piece is pretty unique in that it spans 2 evenings.
Oh.
So when folks register for it, their registration is good for evening A and evening B. It's a 2-part experience with lots of room for interaction and choice making or abstaining. You know, they're all choices. And so anything that folks do or don't do changes the kaleidoscope, as it were.
And is there an underlying narrative to it?
Well, there is. You know, it's almost as if we planned these questions, which of course we didn't, but I am a lover of text. As I mentioned earlier, I thought I was going to spend my days writing essays about literature. And I don't. I spend my days dancing and creating dance works, but text is all woven up and through those dance works. And this one has an original script that I created that sort of guides people through this fantasy, imagining that the beings, the performers in the piece, come from unicorns, come from a lineage and ancestry of unicorns who ate various colors to help their imagination. And they're here to help us know that we have choices as well, and we can shift, and that anything that we do creates options and agency. And again, it really is looking at Black queer folks and what we've done to survive, whether that's creative placemaking or creating our own names for things or creating chosen family. All that is present within Desire, Sankofa Dream.
That's so, I mean, it's so wonderful, and it's so timely as well too, because what's interesting too is that in this time of very in-your-face civil unrest, and also in an unstable government, and then in a pandemic-laden society, it's really nice to be able to have an opportunity to have the hope and the optimism of what some other ancestors might bring to this, and so it's really nice that you've brought this all together at this particular time. What were some of the origins of this piece?
Thanks for saying that. I'm one of them was this idea of joy and fantasy, which you're alluding to. You know, there are all different ways to create the world that we want to live in. And I strongly believe that protest and resistance are 2 of those. And I also strongly believe that living well and experiencing joy are 2 more of the ways that we can create the world that we want to live in. So part of my desire to create this artwork, Desire, a Sankofa Dream, was to fantasize and was to think about a queer narrative from a place of centering us, not translating or explaining us to an audience who isn't us. Now, of course, everyone's welcome and invited, but I wanted to kind of center us and talk about us kind of within our own world, within our own language, and with fantasy and beauty of how we relate and come away from the spaces. And I also wanted to really create an experience where witness participants or guests, audience members, make a lot of choices. Mm-hmm. And so the piece was actually never meant for stage, even before the pandemic. It was never a proscenium work. It was always site responsive, meaning that the performers and the witness participants would travel. And witness participants have choices to make as to where you want to travel. Do you want to see this and miss what's happening here? You know, take your chances. And so that's the way we're still doing it. It's just simply online, which is a blast to kind of explode the platform and see what's possible.
And as I understand it, once the piece is finished in January, once the rehearsal is done, organizations can actually go to your website and they can schedule basically a site specific or an organization specific or an event specific virtual performance of this for those within their own community?
Yeah, we've talked about it touring, and the reason that I use the word touring, even though it's online, and by the way, it's live. It is not a pre-recorded. It's
Right.
live and it's different every time. So it's online in real time.
I mean, real actors and real musicians and real artists are doing the work for you right there at the time. And
That's
so
right.
that's important for people to remember when they look at cost and those kind of things, because this is real stuff that's happening.
Hunter, I swear it's like you and I plan, I just want to say ashe and thank you because you're an artist, you know that. You're exactly right. There's nothing more to add. You said it. But yeah, as far as people being able to host us, it's true, we're touring. And the reason that I'm still using the language of touring is I am thinking of it locally, as local hubs, regional hubs. And a big part of that is that there is a community engagement workshop and some opportunities that relate to the work. And that workshop, we've got one that's open to everybody, but really centers queer and trans POC culture. And then we've got one that is specifically for QT-POC. And so part of what I want to do with this work is help folks find each other, in their communities. Where are the other queer people of color? Where are the other trans people of color? And that's why it's important for us to tour regionally, for organizations to come together to co-host us so that it's their folks in the workshop who we're sort of convening or helping to convene through the attraction of this artwork. But really so folks have a stronger community of themselves after we leave. So yeah, it is true that after the premiere, folks are able to host us. And speaking of the work, I wonder if we can bring up the website, the Collaborators Page, because there's a great cast of folks, and I do not do this work alone, although I'm the only one sitting here now. Is that possible?
I bet Emery will be able to do that. And I think the website is mbdance.com.
We've got a special site just for this piece. It's www.desire.mbdance.net.
Right.
And I know that Emery, I know you've had the company page.
There you go. That's it.
Oh, thanks. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll start to see these folks. I just want to give them a little screen time because they're an amazing cast of Black and queer folks. So if we just keep scrolling down, there's Audrey and Angie and Courtney. These are really world-class collaborators. We've got folks of multiple genders and no genders. There's Johnny.
And if somebody wanted to bring this to their organization, just roughly, what would the cost be to host it?
There's Wendell. Let's see. The creative producer. Oh, and I just have to mention Sharon Bridgeforth. Many folks know Sharon as an amazing artist herself. And I'm so grateful she is dramaturg on this work. Some folks might know her for her own plays, but Sharon is dramaturg for this, and it's amazing. So Maria Warshaw is the creative producer. So when folks would like to host, she's the person to talk with about costs. I'm sort of banned from that as the art maker because I don't want to flub it. And I also know that there are different options available as far as folks collaborating, because we don't want cost to be prohibitive. It does cost, of course, as any piece of art does, but we're hoping that folks collaborate to bring it within their communities. And there's in fact a page devoted to that. It's called Host Us on the website. So folks can look at that when they oh, thanks, Emery. Well, you all could look at it, if you're interested in that, and reach out to Maria, and her email address is there on the site.
Great. Thank
you for letting me share that. It's sweet to be able to share your art. So thank you, Hunter.
No, but it's really important, and I think it's one of the mechanisms that we have available to us right now of being able to bring communities together. We've been doing some work at Stonewall we have a task force on racism, like many other organizations do now. But one of the aha things that we've come away from recently is the idea that, you know, for organizations like the one I'm involved in that have been mostly run by white men for many years, that if we truly want to have a more diverse audience and diversity across the board, we can't just sit there and expect and just say we're going to do this today and people are going to show up. We have to create opportunities to engage other people and to be transparent about it and to get out there into the community and to be able to do those kind of things and bring people in and create those kind of dialogues. And this looks like a wonderful way to me to be able to start that conversation with people.
Thanks for that. As I said, I really wanted to center us on our own terms, and everyone is invited. So that it's not an either or, you know, both and. You know, I work really closely with an organization that I deeply respect around undoing racism, and that is the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the kind of adages of the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond is that anything that has been done can be undone. And we think about that in relationship with the construct of race and racism, that it is not inherent, it's a creation. And so anything that's been created can be destroyed, anything that's been done can be undone. So I really appreciate you talking about the task force, and I think it's up to all of us to undo, to purge some of the old systems, ways of thinking, bylaws, parts of the mission, you know, that really were serving a racist status quo, even if we didn't realize that, you know, even if we're only figuring that out now.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And you know, you have a lot of very well-intentioned people who just didn't really know how bought in they were without knowing it into white supremacy. And so they simply just need to unpack a lot of that stuff in order to make it happen. And, you know, my mantra about all of this is that, you know, we're the adults now. You know, we're the ones in charge. And even though at times it doesn't feel that way, we're not necessarily the ones with all the money, but we are the ones who actually have seats of power, even in smaller grassroots organizations. And so it's not that we have to impose our will, it's simply that we have to allow other voices to be heard. Having power allows other people to be heard in that whole process, or at least to stop them from being silenced.
I'm with you. You know, I agree that we all have choices. We all have choices, and we all have levers that we can press up or down.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, whether we are without employment and are volunteers, or we've got that in our families, just as you said, I don't think we have to be at the top of a multi-million-dollar corporation to say we have choices. I mean, I have choices with MBDance, you know. You can see the cast of stellar performers that I've chosen. That may seem really small, but it's important, again, for me to center us when I look at even the finances of our own company, and the fact that we've recently been having conversations around greater transparency. And I created a survey with the help of Kiki King, who's an amazing administrative associate with MBDance. But I realized I want to know, are y'all making enough money? How's it working for you being freelance artists during a pandemic? Is MBDance giving you as much as we can? Are there non-monetary resources that you think we're connected with that you'd want? And I realized I can't assume that I know those answers. So let me create a survey and ask. And we're unpacking that. We're just starting to unpack that. So I guess I bring those up not to toot my horn at all, but to say, you know, I'm seemingly in some ways small, right? I'm not the head of some big corporation. I'm not, but I guess my point is I agree with you. We all have choices. And so how do I want the world to look? All right, well, let me act as such in my neck of the woods.
And I agree with that completely. And I think that the idea that both of us are sharing here, which seems to be so similar, is the idea, if we, even as small organizations, can impact change within that. So imagine if all of these cells of small organizations, whether they're for-profit or not for-profit, makes no difference. But if these smaller organizations can do it, then I think that then provides leadership to other larger organizations for them to be able to say, you know, look at what these guys are doing. We should be able to do the same thing if they want to make change.
I'm with you, and I'm with you, and I'm going to even take it a step further. When we all do that at a grassroots level, we make obsolete anyone who's not on board.
Yeah.
You know, the larger orgs, if they're not on board, because there is power in our collectivity. So I'm completely with you. I have great hope and faith in the power of individuals and the small guys,
Mhm.
because the fact is we've got immense power collectively.
Yes, yes, of course. I mean, you know, again, to the point that you keep on making, which is so good, is that the power is within all of us. And so all you're trying to do is sort of focus the positive power within people to affect change. And exactly as you say, if we have a broken system, it isn't like it was part of the environment or science or something else. It's man-made. So anything that's man-made can be unmade. And so it just takes the will of people to do that. Let's talk a little bit about your community organizing experience, because that really ties into a lot of these issues. How did you get involved in community organizing?
You know, I think it started organically. Again, I grew up seeing my mom be part of multiple communities. I didn't have the language then of a community organizer, but um, I then, through Jawale and Urban Bush Women, I met the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. And they're definitely, gosh, I met the People's Institute when I was 19, I think. I'm 40 now, just to give context to the length of that relationship. Um, and the People's Institute defines a community organizer as somebody who helps people get a sense of their own power. So, not somebody who works on behalf of everybody, not an activist who is speaking for everybody, but somebody who helps other people get a sense of their own power. And that really struck me. I think Urban Bush Women was a formative experience with that. Jawale is a community organizer, and so when I was part of that dance company, she really emphasized validating the individual who was also part of an ensemble. And that, in an artistic way, was helping folks get a sense of their own power. And then I just continued to study. In undergrad, my minor was in Africana Studies under the amazing Dr. William R. Jones. I laugh just listening to, he's an ancestor now. I'm just loving his memory. But anyhow, I continued that scholarship that I had started with him through the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. And now I work with an amazing group of people that's affiliated with the People's Institute, which is ACRE, Artists Co-Creating Real Equity. And we're a grassroots group of people. I mean, all that we do is have a title, you know, but really we are a group of people. We're a group of people who are artists in all genres, whether homeopathy, classical music, culinary arts, theater, I mean, you name it. And we're all concerned with and enthusiastic about undoing racism in our own field. And so we share the foundation of the People's Institute training, and from there, we kind of operationalize it, which just means we use it in our own lives. Any lever that we have choice control over, we bring those principles. So I'm really grateful to work with ACRE, and anybody could start something like that in their own community.
Yeah, and those are such wonderful models. It's interesting. My history with activism, I was born in 1955. So let's say I started developing a little bit of consciousness around 63 or 64 when things were happening. And so the first thing that I saw were the beginning parts of the Cultural Revolution at the time and the demonstrations against the Vietnam War. And so there was the huge backlash in the 60s to the strident approach of McCarthyism and Eisenhower administration. And then by the time Stonewall happened in 69 and so into the 70s, there was this just flush of euphoria around gay power. And so gay pride marches and all of that. And it was there. And certainly the feminist movement was definitely from a community organizing principle was definitely going along. And that was sort of at the tail end of the Black Panther movement. I mean, the Black Panthers were definitely there more in the 60s that I was aware of, and then into the 70s. And then again, in my experience, then you had this amazing bubble of activism around gay rights. I mean, nobody at the time thought there would be gay. Nobody aspired to get married. You know, I mean, it was not an aspiration that marriage was for other people. It wasn't something that people wanted. And then AIDS came and kind of the door just totally got slammed shut for a while. But after maybe 5 years, you know, by 85 or 86, when ACT UP came up and when then in the early 90s with Queer Nation, and then certainly through the Bushes and even part of the Clintons, we saw you know, we saw a lot of demonstrations, particularly around war for the first time. So that was the second time in my life that I saw demonstrations around war. And then, of course, things took this radical left turn to suddenly elect, you know, an inspiring Black man as president of the United States. And so that was this thing that buoyed us through for a period of time. And then, boom, we get to this point in 2016 where things really changed very dramatically. And I was thinking about today about the Pussy Hat demonstration and a million women all wearing the same knit caps the day after the inauguration in 2016, and thinking about, you know, of course, there were obviously many marches as far as, you know, the Gay March on Washington, the Women's March, and all these other things. But in the last few years, that was a major effort. And then everybody was kind of like chatting around on social media. And I think that took a lot of our attention away. And then this year in 2020, it seems like community organizing has just blown up completely. And this time it's blown up on both the left and the right.
Correct. Yep.
It's just phenomenal for me to see how big those things are. And as much as the right does it, they just throw boulders over at the left all the time, and they misinterpret everything that they say, and they're saying they want to defund the police, and they're saying this and saying that and saying all this awful stuff. And I don't know, maybe we're saying lies about them too, but I don't really think that we are. But I'm sort of biased in this. But so this is a very long way of asking about, so in your experience, how do you feel about what's going on right now with this kind of clash of community organizing that's going on, and people really articulating their points of view out there on the street on both sides of the political spectrum?
Yeah. You know, I'm heartened by it. I think that the pandemic has, at the beginning, I think it slowed us down a little bit. It slowed down the breakneck pace of capitalism, which has since recreated itself. But I think at the beginning, this was so new to us that our attention was a little bit more present.
Mm.
Unfortunately, it's not the case that Nina Pop and Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, I mean, unfortunately, it is not the case that those are isolated incidents or that they're new. You know, the folks who were killed this summer and beyond. But I do think that we had all paused and we were really focusing on our families, on our health, things that make us feel human, our homes. And so to see this, I think brought our values, whatever they are, like from our toe tips to kind of our gut into our heart, you know, all the way on through our values, whatever they were, just went, whoa, I do see this. It's happening. And you're exactly right. The right has been organizing, no question. I mean, if we are not organizing our own friends and family, and by organizing again, I just mean helping folks get a sense of the choices that they have, somebody else is. We know that. If we are not organizing within our own communities, within our own families, that's okay. Somebody else is organizing those folks.
Yes, yeah, and I think let's just stop there for a second, because people really do need to understand that, because I have never seen the right as almost so wound up and sort of be out there in the streets in the same way that progressives and the left were, for what I've seen. I mean, you just didn't see Republicans going to rallies with 20,000 Republicans wearing the same hat. That was not something that you saw before. And even today, with all of the shenanigans with the facts that go on, to see that just this past weekend, a rally happened with, in Georgia with, 12,000 people showing up, and most of them not wearing masks with a pandemic. These people are not going to stop. And I'm one of those that believe that that there will be a peaceful transfer of power, but there won't be quiet by the previous president. And so the rallying call will continue to happen on January 22, January 23, and every day. So the campaign that we went through for the last year is going to continue for the next 4 years.
I'm with you. And something that strikes me is just this idea, may we be well.
Maybe what?
May we be well,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about this idea, whether we're queer, whether we're disabled, whether we're indigenous, whatever, whether we're intersectional, all of that navigating systems that weren't created for us takes a toll on our health, right? We know that. It takes a toll, whether it's something that people can't see, like blood pressure, or whether it's something like a malady, that has a name that everyone sort of gives you this diagnosis. And so as we continue to organize, it's one of the things I love about community organizing is that it is not reliant upon an individual. It's not reliant upon a martyr. I really am working to be well within the work that I'm doing. And I hope that all of our movements have wellness baked in, that we're communing with one another, but that we're talking about this stuff over food, like you said, with a glass of wine, that we're also checking in about how's your family, not just what's the work that we're doing or how's the campaign, because, if our movements aren't built on a vision of us being really whole and well, then we're kind of just burning our energy in the streets, feeding a capitalist machine, in my opinion. So as you talk about all the organizing and all the energy being expended, I'm with it, and I say, may we be well. May we be drinking our water as we're organizing. May we be meditating and getting our exercise, because, right, no matter how great a goal, if it burns us up,
yes, it takes a toll. It takes a toll on people. And as you say, there are very literal ways in which it does, by high blood pressure or stress and those other things, which are very real. But also it just takes a toll on our psyche. And hey, listen, why are progressives and liberals and trying, and those who are interested in doing away with racism and who want a more diverse community? It's simply for us all to be happy. Period. Equality equals happiness. Period. And so that's the goal, and that's what you're espousing, which I really appreciate. Which it's really just about a personal goal. And that if we didn't have ageism and sexism and racism and homophobia and transphobia and all those things, life would be a lot better. It would be so much easier. And it would be so much stress less as a result of it. I see Myra's got a comment in here just about some of the political stuff, and that Georgia is also showing us the way through organizing around voter registration, which is absolutely true. And it is one of the ways that we have to organize. For the election, of course, so many of us just tried to counsel everybody we possibly could to be sure that they were registered to vote. And I think that as far as Georgia goes, I mean, the fine point on Georgia for those of you who are not fully aware is that we are now at some kind of weird 49-51 vote, and with the vice president being able to break a tie. But if we can get those 2 Senate seats, we could, the current House Senate leader Mitch McConnell would not be in power to exert the control that he has. And then also we would have a president who might be able to get 51 votes to get a few things done and get some work done. That's one of the things that actually worries me. I don't know if you have an opinion about this, but as wonderful as this election is, I don't mean to put a negative spin on it. I worry that there will be so much interference from the right. We saw how bad the interference was with Obama. We saw how hard they tried to wound him, and wound him politically. And I just, when I think about the importance of healthcare or equal rights or the environment and some of these other issues that or wage equality, some of these other issues that we take so seriously, will they allow any progressive legislation, even just, I'm not talking AOC, I'm not even going out there to Green New, I'm just talking about just a continuum of trying to be able to do things the right way. I worry about that.
Well, I hear you. You prompted me to look at the chat, and I just want to emphasize again what Maria said. Georgia is showing us, and shout out to Stacey Abrams and everybody she's been working with. I want to underscore that, because for me, it is such a beautiful example of not needing to wait and not needing to have ultimate power in order to affect change. When she lost, let us remember, now we sort of celebrate her. So she lost,
Yeah.
she didn't lose, but by the count she lost. And what I so appreciate and admire about her is that she said, it's not about the title. I will get to work now. And she has worked tirelessly to make sure that all of the votes that had been thrown out for nefarious reasons in Georgia, which, let's be honest, has its history in poll tax and all kinds of tests about count how many jelly beans, guess how many jelly beans are in this jar.
Right.
This all has its history in trying to block a black vote. That is long baked into our history. And she worked tirelessly, and we saw the state flip. Really not actually flip in its heart, right? But we saw that the people's votes were counted, and so the actual representation and feeling of the state just becomes now accurately represented. And I just can't.
And and the Democrats just got more people to the polls by, I forget the difference there, 150,000 or 100,000 votes. But I was thinking about the other day, thinking of Stacey Abrams, with all of the pressure that the Republicans and the current president has put on Brian Kemp and leaders in Georgia. Imagine if Stacey had won and Georgia still turned out the same way in the presidential election. Their hair would have been on fire from one end of Pennsylvania Avenue to the other. It would have.
And that's where, I have to shout out Vinetta also. I see you in the chat, and I see you saying, hey, thanks for centering our joy. I think we have to, right? Because otherwise this stuff makes us crazy. We just follow CNN and we go, and I really appreciate what you said, Hunter, about this is about having a good life. This is about being happy. I care about politics to the extent that it helps me and my family and my community members have a good life, because we have health care, because we have a fair working wage, so for me, centering joy is an organizing strategy. It's not a distraction, because that helps me go, for the sake of what? is this important? Does it improve the quality of life? Okay, great. I'm going to organize for it. You know, is it just about being under a particular banner? Well, then no, I'm not going to organize around that. You know.
Yeah, and the thing that's so interesting about this conversation, of course, these are the underpinnings of your art, and that's what I find to be, and your art, of course, as we said, you know, is a variety. It takes in a variety of different forms, certainly in the dance, but also in your activism as well too. And there's certainly a lot there. Well, we've come to the end of our hour. This has been such an amazing conversation. I have so thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you as well too. And I hope you get a chance to rest a little before you go back to rehearsal. And please, 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 if you come down to Southern Florida, please get in touch with either Emery or me, and we will, by hook or by crook, figure out a way to get you engaged and get you to the archives to see some of that stuff, because it is your state, you know. So
Well, I was going to say, I'll say when it's safe and when it makes sense. I would love to dance the archive and really to help uncover some of our ancestors. I
great.
really appreciate the work that y'all are doing, and it's been a pleasure to talk with you tonight. I really appreciate it.
No, it's been great. And thank you all of you for joining us. This talk has been recorded. And so if you have friends who are interested in it, they can see it on our webpage. It's also being broadcast on Facebook as well too. Hello to everybody at Facebook. Sorry, Mark, you got filed with an antitrust suit today, you know, but we all knew that was coming. Anyway, thanks to everybody who watched it there. Be sure to visit us next week, and we'll have another talk next week. And if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, please feel free to do that. Go to stonewall-museum.org, or Emery has been popping it into the Q&A here, and you get to see all of the listings there. Want to say thank you again to Emery Grant. Emery, if you were back there, there you go. Show yourself. Thank you. Great. And good night, everybody. See you all next week. Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you.